Hello everyone and welcome to the first Middlesex Dressing Room Reunions, a new weekly vodcast taking you inside the home dressing room at Lord's across the years. First up, it's an absolute belter, 1985 to 1995. I can waffle on all day about their achievements, but I'm sure they'll be happy to do that themselves. So let's introduce you to the team we've got here and take it in batting order of Desmond Haynes, Mike Rosebery, Mike Gatting, Mark Ramprakash, Keith Brown, John Embry, Simon Hughes, and the last two, well, you can toss a coin as to which way they come in, Phil Tufnell and Angus Fraser. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Gus, I'm going to throw to you first. This was your baby. I wanted to put it...
Ernie, all right?
Gus, I'm going to throw it to you first and let you introduce a little bit, because this is your baby, of course, that you wanted to document a bit across the years.
Yeah, I just loved it to see Tuppers wearing that cap. It's the second one I gave him. The first one I gave him, I went to an elaborate process of getting on Test Match Special and sort of getting a little segment, and then gave Tuppers the cap, and it had the wrong bloody year on it. I'd given him the cap with the wrong year on it, and he just said 1996. What happened in 96? I said, well, you were capped then. He said, no, I wasn't. I was capped in 1990. So, yeah. Absolute shocker. So, anyway, love to see it, Tuppers.
I think also it had 2 Fs and 1 L.
No, it didn't.
Gat, can I jump in and bring you in here? I mean, you're the captain, so you're the best place to start as well. And one thing that's come across the years on all the commentaries that I've been doing at Middlesex is really the bond between this team, which people often talk about in teams and dressing rooms, and quite often it's not true. But certainly of this team, it was. The bonds, and just listening to you with all the stuff that we can't put on air a few minutes ago, you know, that's still quite apparent.
Got you on mute.
That's exactly like one.
That was a good team talk.
That was one of the better ones, that wasn't it? Yeah, I was trying to do the right thing. No, from my point of view, in '83, when Breers left, I inherited a pretty decent team, and unfortunately, as we went through the years, we managed to find some very talented cricketers all the way through. But not only that, they had great sort of what I'd say ideas of how to play the game in their different ways. There were disciplines that people had. I mean, Ramps was one of those who practiced as hard as anybody and really wanted to do the very best. There was Cat, who was slightly different. You know, who was talented but difficult at times. And, you know, all the way through, there were people who had their different traits about what they were like. But in general, they learnt pretty quickly from the senior guys who were in there. And you had people like, you know, Wayne Daniel, who was brilliant. And then we had another Bayesian that took over who was just as brilliant. Both one with the bat, one with the ball. And the overseas players were always really, really good guys to have around. And I'm sure people like Gus and Ramps and Cat, along with obviously the internationals we had as well, with Embers and Philip. And so Cat learnt from Mr. Edmonds, not necessarily some of his traits, which were just quite outrageous at times, Mr. Philip Edmonds that was, as opposed to Cats that were just sort of generally undisciplined, basically. I mean, you can't say any more than that. And then you had the likes of people like Brownie, who was absolutely fantastic. He was one of those sort of guys who just got in there with the team and just used every ounce of his ability and just really got stuck in and did the right thing. So, you know, and then of course there was Yoza. I mean, Yoza was one of those who, when he got a wicket, it wasn't actually, he didn't bowl a good ball. It just wasn't a very good shot from the bloke who was up the other end. And, you know, it was just, you know, one of those lovely sort of scenarios that as a captain, you had many different people in there. Rad was there to start with, and Rad was a fantastic sort of buffer for me, along with Embers and that. And as I say, having the young talent coming through, like the young Ramps and Tufnell, and then Mickey, you know, Mickey's coming. It was just the flow was amazing of different people that had just wonderful sort of abilities and desire for Middlesex to do well, which was great.
Embers, these are Gus's words.
Sorry, go on, Kevin.
Embers, these are Gus's words. He said, start with the 2 old boys and let them take us through just those early couple of years going into '85. So he said, start with Gat and Embers.
I mean, just going on from where Gat went on, I think the great thing about the Middlesex side, say the 70s going into the 80s and the 80s into the 90s, was we had Alexi success is that every player in the side was a potential match winner. And we didn't always see eye to eye, but once we got onto the field, there's always someone that made a contribution to that success. You know, Gus would bowl at one end at the pavilion all bloody day, and I'd ruck that I should be bowling, and he said, well, if I don't bowl, then I'm not going to get back on because I'll bowl. And it was that sort of competitive edge we had all the time, I think, that kept us ahead of the other sides. In terms of the way that we performed. It was good fun, it was good banter, but it was a very, very aggressive dressing room as well, where everyone had an opinion. We didn't always agree to agree. But once we got onto the cricket field, we just got it right. That's what I remember from all the sides that I played in, and that period, or the period that we've got the boys here now in particular.
I mean, can I just sort of add to that as well? I mean, you know, the guys that I haven't mentioned that you know, which is when you see all the people on here, it's fantastic. You got all, but you know, the people like Slacky, who sadly isn't with us anymore, was hugely important to us, and people like Neil Williams, you know, Normie Cowans, John Carr, who came in at the moment, an absolutely amazing sort of cricketer. You know, was turning one way and then was turning back the other way. He was front on for about 5 years, went away, came back, came totally side on. Wonderful. And Roland Butcher as well. I mean, Butch was just outstanding as a fielder, a slip catcher. And you could keep going on. There's lots of, you know, you haven't mentioned stills. Paul Downton came in that particular period in time as well. So there were just so many. And I'm you know, you're going to forget some people, but, you know, it's not because they haven't been forgotten. Sorry,
you always look at that, say, doing a bit of research and sort of saying, well, we won the title in '85 and sort of '86, '87. They were pretty ordinary years, sort of 12th and 16th. So it was almost like the end of an era. And again, it was the era where the likes of the people here, your Brownies, myself, Mickey, Ramps, Tuffers, came through. And obviously there was a change in the squad. And I suppose a lot of that had to do with Don Bennett, didn't it? And his sort of ability to identify cricketers. And I suppose Don gave all of us, Keith, myself, Ramps, Tuffers and Mickey, our chances to sort of become cricketers. But he ran a pretty tight ship, didn't he, boys? I mean, it was hard. He was a hard man to please, Don.
Do you think, actually, Gus, that's interesting, that, because we all remember second 11 cricket in those days was obviously different to now. And obviously, if you growled at your DB, you knew that something was up. He was obviously a man of few words, but he was a wonderful person, wasn't he? We'll all agree with that. I think a lot of the stuff, he obviously didn't say a great deal, but when he did something or said something, everyone stood up and listened. Now, I always remember a little story he did with me actually years ago, and I used to like practice and get there early. And one day I was having this practice session, and Slacky was still alive actually, God bless him. And DB pulled me out after the net, pulled me one side. He said, Mickey, Slacky and I had been watching, and what you've been doing in the net, what you've been practicing. And I just looked at him, so dumbfounded. I went, oh, I don't know. I hadn't actually been practicing anything. I'd just been going in, hitting the ball, not doing anything. But by that just one comment, by him just realising with Slacky what was going on, it made a big difference. You're a great man, and obviously a great insight into the game.
Tuffers, you had a couple of instances with DB, didn't you?
Well, I did have a couple with Don. You're right. He was a scary
Leeds comes to mind.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to come out there. Well, man, you've had the jumpers on for me, didn't you? I was having to But the one thing that Don did, and just looking at all the boys on the screen here, or I know Ramps might have nipped across the water, Mickey went up to Durham and everything, but most of the people here, played for Middlesex all their careers. You know, and I couldn't have gone anywhere else really to play another game of cricket. You know what I mean? And that's just, you know, you're saying about the bond and what have you, but then, you know, Don Bennett really made you sort of like proud to play for Middlesex. You know what I mean? Middlesex meant something. Nowadays, the boys have all got about 25 clubs, and they all go here for 6 months out on loan. You know, I couldn't have dreamed of playing for another club, really.
I think there's a sort of, there was an atmosphere of excellence about it as well. I mean, when I came into the side, in the sort of early 80s. You know, there was the Brearleys and Radleys we've mentioned, obviously Embers, Phil Edmonds, what an extraordinary character he was, always leaving the dressing room, the last out of the dressing room. Well, I suppose I'm going to bowl immaculately again today, he'd say. And, you know, there was this sort of atmosphere of excellence and confidence. And we all talked about the game a lot. I mean, Embers, you know, you loved talking about the game. It was inspiring for a young player to come into that environment where people cared so much and there was so much ability and an expectation of playing aggressive cricket and playing, well, you know, successful cricket too. But just so many talented people around. Obviously, I think Lord's environment as well. You always knew there could be a, you know, when Tuffer said there about people wanting to play for Middlesex all their career. I mean, there's something special about Lord's, not just for its environment, but for the potential that there might be an England selector hanging about on the balcony. You know, you never know who's watching at Lord's. It's a special place to play. It lifts your game. So I can see why, you know, it's been such a kind of loyal club. There have been so many players who've played for so long. And obviously the success also helps.
I think,
sorry, Brownie, go on.
no, I think one of my first memories of Don was at Ealing Barclays Bank pre-season training. Far cry from the far-fetched countries people go now. And I think we always used to do shuttles in the morning under Graham Barlow's leadership. And then the afternoon was a bit of a all five-a-side kick around. And I remember Butch being quite flash football, a little semi-pro footballer, quite flash. And Don didn't take any prisoners and just put him straight through the fire exit. He just walked off. And a few words, but you know what you said.
Well, actually, we played a second team game at Barclays in the early 80s against Essex, and it was a 2-day game. And the second day, we needed only about 30 to win. We'd had 3 innings already. There'd been some declaration. We only needed 80 to win. We were 20 for 0 overnight. And remember, Barclays Bank had that outdoor swimming pool. So because we only needed a few to win, we were no wickets down overnight. Quite a few of us lower down the order said, "Oh, you know, time for a gig." Because Don Bennett, the coach, had actually been called away, or he was on the phone or something, so he wasn't sort of around. So a few of us dropped into the pool and had a quick swim while play started, with us only needing 80 to win. And Jamo Spikes, he comes running back, looking really worried. About 10 minutes into play, saying we're 25 for 4. And suddenly all of us had to get out of the pool and put our whites on with the kind of swimming trunks underneath. So the stripy bits of the swimming trunks sort of showing through our whites because they're still wet. And we had to go out and bat, and we were all out for 29. And you can imagine what Don Bennett's reaction to that was, you know, coming back in the dressing room and finding we were all out for 29, seeing discarded pairs of swimming trunks on the floor, the odd pair of goggles, and we were all out for 29. He wasn't happy. He went absolutely mental. When he went mental, it could be quite damaging, sort of fielding practices, and he used to whack it so hard, didn't he, that you kind of injured your fingers taking the catches. So he used to know how to dish out the punishments.
Yeah, he was very good at camouflage, Don, because in second team games and stuff, you'd come creeping in at night, and he'd always put me there, like that, when he'd be there, wouldn't he, sort of like behind a doorway or something. And didn't have to put his chips on his car, didn't he? Remember that?
Yeah, I did that.
That was in Leicester, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was very strict. We had a meal. He wanted us to eat properly rather than to eat junk food. I mean, Don was ahead of his time. So many ways in fitness and the way you looked after yourself. I remember he gave me a rollicking once because I had a bad back and I was kept turning up in a dodgy pair of loafers or something. And he told me no uncertain words to go and get a proper pair of shoes if you wanted to look after your back. But yeah, I put the chips on the top of his car because Kevin James parked next to it, and he gave me the most fearful rollicking I've had. There was one favourite, again, there was one famous sort of second 11 talk, wasn't it, of a miserable year, where he sort of said, he'd given us a rollicking, and he finished it by saying, he says, all I know is there's a few people going at the end of this season, and I ain't one of them. And he turned around and shut the door and left.
But you know that sort of stuff that comes from Don was the fact that he was actually involved in professional sport in the football, and I think he realised what it took to actually become a professional. And I think he was trying to help us in many ways into making sure that we were tough enough to actually make the sort of the team, if you like. And he really did give us, as you rightly say, a really good guide.
Around the ground.
I remember
Gus,
when he was sprinting across the nursery after you Tuffers.
Well, that's because my first wife, Alison, had asked me. I was doing 12 man. I was meant to do 12 man, but I said I had a game for Southgate, and so I said, "Oh, I can't do 12 man. I've got a game for Southgate." And Don knew I wasn't playing for Southgate. But he let me get changed and everything. Let me get changed. I said, "Well, I'm off to go and play." And he went, "Oh, well, Phil, oh, well." And I said, "I will do, And I had to go and get a fridge freezer for my wife because we just moved into a flat. And she said, "No, you're not playing cricket. It's Saturday. We've got to go shopping." I said, "I'm a cricket." She said, "No, you've got to go and get this fridge freezer." So I arrived out of it, and I'd gone round to the nursery ground. And I got in the Volvo, and I was driving up towards the North Gate like that, and I saw him legging it across the nursery ground like that, and I sort of put my toe down. He's coming forward. He ran in front of the car. I slammed the brakes on. He went, "Get out!" He grabbed me out of the car. Car still running. Frog marched me back into the dressing room and said, "You sit there, you might learn something." Like that. But the car was still running. He trapped the car. Terrifying. I'll tell you something, I never did it again. Yeah, she was a wrong on that first wife of mine, actually. She went into Tim Lamb because she wanted to get married on a Saturday. And I said, "Well, I can't. You know what I mean? I can't. I'm a cricketer. We play on Saturdays." Like that, she said, "No, we're getting married on a Saturday." So she went into the office, and she was quite strong, big girl, Alison. And she grabbed Tim Lamb. Lammy's like that. She's kicked the door open, grabbed Tim Lamb across the desk like that. Said, "We're getting married on Saturday." Lammy was going, "No, you can't get."
Tim Lamb was the chief executive.
He was the chief executive. Oh, there you go.
Hello. Tuffers.
Oh, blimey.
There's you looking for your
doing a bit of
bird watching binoculars.
He wasn't looking at the play, that is for sure.
But no, he said, "You sit there." He said, "You sit there," and he said, "You might learn something." And I sat there all day and had to watch cricket. You know what I mean? And you don't know.
There you are. Look, there you are. Looking at some birds.
Did you, Yoz?
Where's that Kent in it?
Look at this one, Gus.
Oh!
Hey, there's a close up.
Not changed a bit.
Lovely, isn't it? Lovely. And there's one of Gat. Look at that. Beautiful slimline cat.
That's at Lord's, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lord's, yeah.
Whose is the Simmons Tusker?
Do you remember, Gat? Do you remember us complaining about the press one day and saying, "Oh, bloody press"? And somebody said, "Oh, you can't really argue with the press too much." And you said, "Well, can I complain about Boyks saying I was fat?" And Brownie said, "No, you can't argue with the truth."
I don't remember that one. I can't believe Brownie would have said that.
Brownie, do you remember when you were sent to M&S to get some trousers for Gat?
Yeah.
That was Manchester.
Where was that?
You bent down and ripped the arse out your trousers and sent Brownie as 12th man to M&S. And what were the trousers you got, Brownie?
I can't remember.
Large ones,
38,
38 or something, yeah.
38,
38, 29 they were.
Yeah, 38, 29. That's why he's had jeans in the dressing room, because they couldn't get me to fit it.
Shocking.
Someone said that Brownie should go to Army and Navy store.
Actually, do you remember as well when you were banned from driving and you got on that bike? You had a sponsored bike by Peugeot. You put a corset on. You put a corset on to pose for the picture to keep his gun.
I remember the time that you and Nobby were on the.
Could have bloody walked to Lord's quick.
When you were
Sorry, Brownie?
when you were on the Cambridge diet, I remember down in Bristol in one of those outbuildings that we were changing in. And you waited all day for your little bit of chocolate. And we nicked it.
I was starving. I was starving.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
Desi,
I mean,
let's
obviously,
get Desi in.
yeah, I was going to say, Gap, we got, I mean, Wayne goes, and what made you get Desmond?
He happened to be a pretty decent player, so I was told. No, we needed somebody, because I was looking back in some of the books. I had to open the innings for a little while at one stage there before Weeksy actually opened. But no, I mean Desi was as Don said. I mean Don sort of got this is about you know, there's one bloke that's not sort of been looked at, and he said, oh, you know, Desmond Haynes, what do you think? I said, crikey. I said, why not? And of course, Don had done really well over the years with overseas players. I think the only one that I remember we had slight problem with injury was Dion Nash, the New Zealand guy. Unfortunately, got a bad injury, stress fracture. But all the others have been absolutely outstanding. And Don said, look, you know, and once I'd met Desi, I knew Desi reasonably well because he was chirping in my ear at short leg when Macca was running in, and on one or two occasions. But, you know, you knew what he was like. And I think I just said, yeah, I mean, it'd just be a great addition just because of his attitude and the way he was. He didn't mess around. He was an honest guy. And you know, we was always going to make him a better player and make him play spin a bit better because he could never play Embers.
Well, I'll just say, I think Des, you got, I think it was a lovely sunny day. I think you got about 230 against Sussex or something at Lord's. And I was going, I slept for 2 days. 2 days, not required. It was lovely. I love it.
What about the time, tough as you were asked to be night watchman at Hastings against Sussex? Tell us about that one. Gat got you to be night watchman because Gus and I used to alternate be night watchman, and then for some reason you were asked to do it at Hastings.
Why was I asked? Why? It was ridiculous.
I refused. I'd got the pin because I bowled badly.
Oh, there you go. You bowled badly, so you were sulking off in the showers, and then Gat said, "Get him on." I said, "Oh, really?" Like that. So then I had to come out, and Pygott was bowling.
Yeah, Tony Pygott.
He was quick, Tony Pygott. You know what I mean? He's running a bowl. You know what I mean? Like that. And the first ball I backed away and nicked it, and that's the first time I've ever seen slips duck. Jesus Christ, I smashed it. One bounce.
Can I come in here? I just want to talk about my introduction to Middlesex because I remember I was in Australia and we heard about the death of the Slack, and there was talk going around that Middlesex might be looking for overseas pro. And I was rooming with Malcolm Marshall at the time. And what Malcolm said to me, you know something, Desi, I believe that Middlesex is going to go for you. I said, no way, man. You know, Middlesex will probably go for Gordon Greenwich because Gordon just lost his contract at Hampshire. And obviously being someone who was so successful in county cricket, and I've never played county cricket, I just thought, well, there's no way that I am going to actually get the job. And then a couple of days after, I got a call from Gaz. And I said to Malcolm, boy, you're right, you know, the Middlesex is looking to get me to play county cricket. And I remember Malcolm saying, well, you know, it will be a good opportunity because you're playing at Lord's, you know, you just got to be very much concerned that, you know, everybody wants to play at Lord's, and also that you understand that Middlesex don't pay well, you know, they don't give you big contracts. So I said to Malcolm, well, you know, I'm going to talk to people like Viv and Gordon and see what, you know, what I'd be looking for. And then after having discussions with some of the senior players, Viv and Gordon, guys who play county cricket, the guys assure me that Middlesex is a good enough team that even if you don't make the money, right, in the contract, that you'll win something. You know, they guarantee that you'll win something, you know, every year at Middlesex. So that was the way how I went about it. But then after my experience there winning at Middlesex, then I find Mrs. Tasha took most of it, you know, and then I was back to square one. So, you know, for somebody like me who had a lot of ivory to feed, you know, obviously the pound signs on my face was always there. But on a serious note, though, I think it was a situation where that it helped me to, you know, focus a little bit more on my cricket.
What's that, Gus?
Can't see it, Gus.
I can't say it, Gus.
First year, Desi's first year, 2,000 runs.
Yeah, I remember my first game as well. I got the Man of the Match award against Surrey when Clive Lloyd was the adjudicator. And also, it was the last game of Sylvester Clark. And I remember the guy saying, we're going to the pub and celebrate. And I asked him why. They said, well, you heard the news? I said, no. So I was in the big tub in the back. And the guy said, Sylvester Clark just retired. You don't have to worry about him again. So I realized that he was a very fearsome guy in the county circuit, and everybody was very happy when he pulled stumps, you know. But again, getting back to my career, you know, I learned a hell of a lot in the Middlesex dressing room. Also, you know, I realized that Gats, as a captain, he was a very good player spins, and also everybody in the county knew that Gats was a very good player spin, and they never wanted to go spin at Gats, not knowing that I'm weak as hell at the spin. So when Gats and I are batting, I guarantee there's a little bit of medium pace coming up from the other end. So I didn't have to worry about that. You know, but, you know, eventually, you know, over the years, you know, I realized that Ernie never tried to help me because he always figured that I'm not going to try to bowl spin at Desi in the nets because I might just have to play against him for the West, in the West, against the West Indies. So I never got to help him that. But, you know, I learned on my feet, you know, as you go along. And again, I was very thankful that county cricket playing 3 days, where you playing home and away. It was a lot of cricket. You could go for months, you know, playing every day. So to me, I believe that that was also very much a learning curve. You know, where every day you get up, you were playing cricket, you know. So if you don't learn playing a sport every day, you'll never learn, you know. So I was very happy. The only problem I had with the situation of playing every day and the traveling is that I was sometimes here with Ernie. And we would go three hours up north, you know, and he talks for 3 hours. I mean, I get knowledge. I didn't get a chance to get a word in, you know, but it was good crack. It was always about, you know, developing the game and how you should go about with your sport. But my goodness, I got this thing that I can't sleep in a car. So I had to really listen to Ernie 3 hours up and 3 hours coming back.
Just say one thing. Desi hit me into the airport onto the runway in Grenada. Now that little one-day game, there was a one-day game. Desi, that slog sweep. Slog sweep used to play like that. Hit me onto the runway. Hit me onto the runway.
So that potentially.
And then the other thing too is those 40 over games on Sunday. I mean, we were way ahead of our time, you know. A lot of people asked us how we would fare in T20 cricket. But you remember many times when there was a 40 over game, the Sunday League, rain affected, and then it's cut down to 20 overs or something, or 25 overs, you know. We were happy to hear that because we could give it the charge from ball one. I just used to love it, you know, that those stupid little medium paces bowling, and there's a short side at Lord. I'm going for the short side, man.
Ramps, I was going to ask Desi actually about, you know, obviously hearing all these guys talking and then joining into that side. You, of course, I was listening to you on TMS a few years back actually talking about how when you came through, it was actually great for you because you go out in the evening, just sit at the table and listen to Gat, listen to Embers in a good way, talking about cricket. That it was, you know, a phenomenal side to come through into.
Look, yeah, I mean, I remember watching the team in the mid 80s, early 80s on television, and you know, watching people like Roland Butcher swoop round the boundary and throw it in over the top, and Clive Radley and Gat, obviously. And, you know, it was such a great identity with Middlesex. Growing up in a cult, you know, I got into the Middlesex under 11s. I got naught in the trial, so I must have walked to the wicket well or something, because I managed to get selected. But I came through the ranks there, and there was a great identity and culture in the club. And my first day of pre-season, Gussie very kindly picked me up, but we were late. There was a bit of traffic on the A41. So both of us were late, having to get over in our whites into the nursery, join the team for warm-up. And that was the first time that I saw these array of international cricketers in the Middlesex dressing room, and it was absolutely fantastic. And we had that great core of players that kind of policed the dressing room, if you like. And what I mean by that was, it was this kind of healthy conflict where, you know, if you had something to say, you said it. And, you know, if someone wasn't pulling their weight, they got told. You kind of accepted that, you know. And, I was luckily put next to John Embry in the changing room, my first match. And, you know, Embers, I haven't really spoken to him too much. And, you know, he always looked immaculate in his whites, but Jesus, could he swear? Bloody hell. So he took a lot of, he basically got involved in a few heated discussions, which took the emphasis on the youngster. And we, as I say, we had these senior players. Gat, I think, handled the environment brilliantly, because he was a leader that could cope with the big personalities, and he felt that, you know, if you had something to say, you got it out there. Just, you know, you're challenged about it, that's fine. But then you could move on. And I think that we had those senior players with some very good young players. And people often ask me about to contrast the skill levels, you know, but back then, I think the skills were fantastic. The slip catching was brilliant. The accuracy of the spinners, and the quality of the batsmanship, you know, all of it was fantastic. And Middlesex was a tough place to be for some. You know, they couldn't handle that environment, but I think it bred a kind of mentality to try and excel, you know. And we were very lucky to have those senior players to join.
Because Gus, yesterday we had a quick natter about Don, and one of the things you mentioned, a lot of you, all of the great things about Don on here already, but one thing we hadn't touched on was that turnover of team. And Ramps mentioned about coming into the side there. You'd said that was one of his real strengths, Don, as well, was being able to change the team around.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I came in starting in '84, and I mean that was a great side. You sort of Slack, Barlow, Gat, Brad, Roland Butcher, Downton, Embry Edmonds, Cowans, Williams, Daniel, and that sort of side then became, with 4 or 5 of them, into the group that is essentially here. And I suppose, I mean, some of the movement, I mean, as we said, Wolf sadly passed away. Rad came to an end, Butch came to an end, Edmonds went to work in the city. So there was a sort of natural transfer, and there were a lot of good players that left. I mean, when you think who didn't get in that Middlesex side, who's had great careers, so Kevin James and Raj Maru went to Hampshire, Colin Metzson to Glamorgan, Graham Rose to Somerset, Philip de Freitas and Chris Lewis, they both went to Leicestershire. So there was a lot of players, and they left because they obviously felt they had a better chance of playing for cricket there than at Middlesex. But I think the fact that Don did sort of transition, or kept Middlesex success going basically for another sort of 7 or 8 years with a new sort of team as such, and again the introduction of someone like a Desi. But yeah, I mean Don's very special to all of us in lots of ways. Blimey. Tuffers, were you going through? I mean, you were Liam. You weren't Liam Gallagher there, were you? You were someone else doing.
Listen, I'm looking hot there, man. I'm looking. Hot.
Is that when you had the 2 speakers in the back of your Volvo car?
Yeah. And I used to wear
Dead or Alive,
Tarzan underpants and snakeskin shoes.
So, Desi, how did this dressing room compare to a West Indies one then?
Well, the West Indies dressing room obviously was different because you had people who were from different islands. And I remember my first time rooming with Michael Holding, you know, it took me some time to understand what he was saying. Because obviously I'm from Barbados, and Mikey was speaking with very strong Jamaican accent. And then gradually, you know, you get to hear every morning and then you start getting used to it a little bit more as you go along, you know. But, you know, the Barbados dressing room was very much like the Middlesex dressing room, because what I find in the Middlesex dressing room is a lot of the guys wanted to play cricket for England. And that is something that you will see in Barbados dressing room. The Barbadians would always want to play cricket for West Indies. So the atmosphere in the Middlesex dressing room was very similar to playing for Barbados, whereas everybody was determined, if I do well, you know, I can go on and play for my country. And as you can see, you know, there's a lot of, personally, when I compare the talent, I'm not saying it because Mark is here with us, but I think that when I first saw Mark, I then tried to compare any youngster that I've had the opportunity to play with in Barbados. And I must say, I mean, Ramps had talent that was oozing out of him. You know, it was, I remember we played a game at where Mikey used to play, that ground near the West Coast. Derbyshire. And Ramps hit a 6. I have never seen a ball went so far in my life. You know what I mean? I don't know what was in it. It's just because he had tremendous back speed, you know. And if there's one thing that I would like to see with the whole idea of when people go into teams, everybody always talk about the coach and they want the coach to do this. You know, my memory of Don Bennett, he never say much, you know. You had to learn on the job, you know. If you're doing something wrong, yes, he will pull you. But basically, we learn from each other, you know. It wasn't a situation where we had someone telling us when to do extra practice, when to go and bowl some balls at somebody. We were actually a very well-oiled machine. You know, we done what we thought was right in order for us to improve. And nowadays I find that the present day cricketer, you know, if you take them out on the park, they don't move unless you tell them, well, let's warm up, fellas. Or they don't move unless you tell them, well, let's come back, you know. It's a situation where, do you want me to tell you when to go to the bathroom? You know, come on, man. If you're playing a sport and you want to be good at it, you know, you got to take the initiative. You got to go there and do the extra work. Mickey used to be down in the nets. You know, if Lawrence was open at 5:30, I guarantee you that Mickey would be there at 5:30. You know what I mean? You had a lot of guys who used to get in the nest early, get some put downs, try to work on the cricket. Bungie again, who I thought was, you know, very limited, but talking about heart and always wanted to take a challenge. You know, Bungie was one of the toughest cookies that I've ever met. Okay, if you compare Bungie with Toughers now, when the wicket is turning, Toughers don't want to bowl. Oh, how am I going to bowl now? It's doing too much. Yes, why don't you give it back to Anders? You know, and I remember those days, but then it was a dressing room that these are guys who were always willing to learn, you know. I learned a lot from yours as well. It's the first man I've seen who goes into the dressing room and you know where he's staying because he dropped his pants and then everything dropped down there. And then when the game is over, he just took his foot. He just took his feet in his trousers and put it up on his toes, you know?
I mean, you're right. I mean, we never really, did we ever train? Did we ever really train?
Yeah. I remember we do a little bit of jogging, you know what I mean? But we never used to be into all of this thing that people are doing out up and down the place, you know. But you know, we were, mind you, but we were fit though, you know. If you look at us, we were all fit players, you know, because we played a lot of cricket. But the thing about our fitness, which people didn't understand, you know, is that we were cricket fit. I mean, Gussie bowled some balls that, you know, sometimes people used to ask, come on, man, you just gotta, you know, cool out a bit, you know, Gussie. And then Gussie would go and play and bowl more for his club. You know, we were cricket fit, and that is where a lot of countries and a lot of coaches and a lot of people, they're misunderstanding what is fitness. They believe that you can go in the gym, push a lot of weights, you know, make sure you look like, you know, Gonzalo or some big Mandingo or one of these guys, you know, and then not realizing that it might be better for you to bowl some bloody balls, hit some balls, you know, get the chance to see the ball shape it a little bit, leaving you and all of that, instead of talking about how, oh yeah, I can run to the big test. That's the thing that the modern day cricket, you know, is going, and people are talking about the T20, and that's why I was saying to you that I think that we were really ahead of our time, because anyone here or anyone in that Middlesex team could have played any version of the game. T20, 50 over, Test. These were guys who were talented. And there's one other thing that I want to say regarding my experience there, and I learned from that. One day we were playing at Lord's, and one of the fastest bowlers that I've ever played against, right? A guy by the name of Van Truth.
Ooh.
Van Truth had only about 10, 15 minutes to go. I stupidly decided that I'm going to take him on and shield John Carr. And I got one on my left forearm. And this thing hurt me. But, you know, basically, my culture showed me, you must never show pain. So I waited out. Anyhow, we survived the evening. And then I got rushed off to Wellington Hospital. So I went to the hospital, they done the x-rays. Everybody said it's just badly bruised. It is not broken. Gone to the Middlesex flat and can't sleep, crying all through the night, pain all through my hand and everything. Anyhow, eventually I went back out the next day, and the first thing I said to myself was, Kazi is on his own today, buddy. There will be no shielding him. Not against this block, you know, because
How did you get, Desi?
Pardon me?
How did you get?
120 not out.
I can't remember.
Hey Gus,
But,
what about when you were night watchman? You had to go in and you were on a king pair against Patrick Patterson. Tell us what happened there.
Oh,
Yeah, I've been here. Well, Mickey got hit. I was in because I think Mickey got hit.
oh, my fault.
It was. I think you elbow one onto your head, and it ball hit the stumps, and there was a bit of blood spattered around the crease. So I'm taking guard, and there's a bit of Mickey's blood down there because he's torn one. I was night watchman. I was on a king pair. I thought, well, he's going to pitch it up. I was LBW Allard in the first innings. I thought so. I sort of slightly erred forward, and this throat ball hit me in the gloves and sort of up in the air and caught behind king pair, and I got a gob pull from Atherton as I walked up because I'd given him some lip when he was batting. But yeah.
Brownie.
I remember Mickey hooking Ambrose and no fans, you know. And Amby came down the wicket to me and said, "Who is this guy?" I said, "Well, you're gonna know soon. But he love a short ball. So if you keep bowling short balls,
It was either hook or get hit.
you're gonna know him, you know." So,
Brownie, talking about fast bowling, I think I got this right. Mid-80s, 86, 87, did you face a spell against Malcolm Marshall at Lord's?
Yes.
Yeah.
Remember it well.
That's the fastest spell. I wasn't playing, and I remember watching that in the grandstand.
Yeah.
Side on. And I think it was after
remember
tea, or it was before the end of play.
It was a really hot day and the wicket was glistening. And he bowled one particular ball.
Wasn't it?
The quickest colour bowler I've ever seen.
Yeah, he bowled the ball and it was short, and I knew it was short, but I lost it after that. I just put my hand up and it hit me on the glove and went down, fortunately. Everyone said, well played. I didn't have a clue where it was going, really. Yeah.
I remember the Malcolm Marshall story when we played in the semi-finals at Southampton. We were in a small dressing room there, and we were having this team talk about the opposition. And I got this thing where we're having this discussion, and I heard Gats talking about the opposition, and then they came to Malcolm, and Gussie came in and said, "Oh man, he has a lovely away swinger, and now he's learned how to bring the ball back in. And if you come forward a little bit, he's got a very good short ball." I had to interrupt the meeting. I said to Gats, "Listen, Malcolm bowled bad balls as well, yeah? Because the way how you guys talking, it looks as though we're gonna have no chance against the man, yeah?" Because that we in the West Indies, we don't give the opposition so much praise, you know, because then you're defeated even before you get there. And I remember the first ball Malcolm bowled at me in that game was
It
a short ball,
bouncer.
and I lick it to mid-wicket. And he said to me, "Man, you was looking for that?" I said, "Yes." I mean, I have to look for it because don't care how close we are, Malcolm. Your joy and your delight would be to hit me on the head, buddy. So, you know, I always knew that it was always those competitive vices that we had to go through, you know. So, you know, Malcolm, I always find that he was a very clever bowler, very good county bowler as well, somebody who knew all the county batsmen as well. I think that was something that I learned, you know, over the years, that I watched how Gats, you know, would, you know, for the time a batsman come out, Gats would then automatically either bring on Ernie or Tuffers and say, look, you know, he needs a bit of spin. Sometimes he would take off Gussie, which is something that Gussie would get very, very annoyed. He would probably just go down the 5-line boundary and sulk all day. But it was always for the betterment of
Do you remember when Rams, well, I think it was at Basingstoke, when you tried to hit Malcolm back over his head for 6 and your back broke, and you tossed your bat in the bin as you walked off the field. I don't think
I just about got it off.